Ever feel just exhausted by trying to be perfect all the time? Like you're chasing something you can never quite catch.
Oh, absolutely. That pressure, it's intense. And maybe, just maybe, that chase itself is what holds us back.
Exactly. So today we're going to explore that. We're looking at imperfection, vulnerability, and what Brené Brown calls living a wholehearted life.
Right. Based on her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. And Brené Brown, she's known as a shame researcher.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is how her own research into things like shame and fear, well, it ended up changing her own life pretty profoundly.
It really did. She started by collecting just thousands of stories
Yeah,
from all sorts of different people.
trying to find patterns, right, in how we experience these big emotions.
Exactly. Looking at the patterns, seeing what connects experiences of shame, fear, but also crucially, worthiness. How does some people cultivate that sense of being enough, even with flaws?
It's such important work, and for anyone listening who wants to dive even deeper after this discussion, check out our YouTube channel, Mindful Moments.
Oh, yeah. They do AI-powered book analysis. Really great for sparking reflection, getting you thinking critically about these kinds of ideas.
Definitely worth a look. So our goal here today is, well, to pull out some key insights from Brown's book.
Yeah, maybe help us all let go a little of who we think we should be.
And embrace who we actually are.
The amazing person you already are right now.
Okay, so where do we start? Brown talks about this, like, pivotal moment in her research, these two lists.
Yes. The do and don't lists. It was quite a moment for her. She looked at all the language people were using in their stories.
And saw a split.
Really clear split. On one side, the do column, you had words like worthiness, rest, play, trust, faith, intuition, hope.
All the things that feel expansive, authentic.
Exactly. Authenticity, love, belonging, joy, gratitude, creativity, all that good stuff.
And the don't list.
Well, that was things like perfectionism, numbing, needing certainty, exhaustion.
Oof. Sounds familiar.
Right. Self-sufficiency, trying to be cool, fitting in, judgment, scarcity. It was like a map of struggle versus a map of, well, wholeheartedness.
It's kind of shocking how many of those don't words feel like societal expectations sometimes, like exhaustion being a status symbol.
Totally. The hustle culture, right. Always striving, never arriving. And Brown herself had a huge reaction to seeing this.
What happened?
She looked at these lists, compiled from her own research, and just realized, wow, my life is all in the don't column.
Oh, wow. Even as the researcher.
Yeah. She talks about this sticker shock. Seeing her own perfectionism, her own constant need to prove herself reflected right there in the data.
That must have been incredibly confronting.
Definitely. And that, she says, was the catalyst. It led her to therapy, to what she calls a spiritual awakening.
She has that funny name for it, right?
Yeah, her 2007 breakdown, Spiritual Awakening, kind of implies that sometimes you need things to fall apart a bit.
To build something new. Makes sense. And I bet a lot of people listening can relate to feeling more aligned with that don't list.
For sure. Society pushes us that way, doesn't it? The messages are everywhere. Achieve more, look perfect, keep it all together. It ties our value to these external things.
So if that's the problem, how do we shift towards the do list, towards that wholehearted living? What are the tools?
She identifies 3 core tools, or maybe practices: courage, compassion, and connection. These are the essentials for living from that place of worthiness, for embracing imperfection.
Courage, compassion, connection. They sound big, maybe a little abstract.
They can sound that way, yeah. But she really emphasizes these aren't just lofty ideals, they're daily practices. Small things, consistently.
Things we actually do.
Right. And here's the key thing she points out. It's our vulnerability, our imperfection, that makes these tools necessary in the first place.
That flips the script, doesn't it? We usually think vulnerability is something to avoid.
But she's saying, no, vulnerability is the birthplace of courage, compassion, and connection. It calls them forth.
Okay, so let's dig into that. At the heart of it all, she says, is believing we're worthy. How does that connect to love and belonging?
It's fundamental. She argues that believing you are inherently worthy, right now, just as you are, is the absolute key to truly experiencing love and belonging.
It's not something you earn.
Nope, it's your birthright. And she makes this really important distinction between fitting in and belonging.
Right, tell us about that.
So fitting in is when you change yourself, you contort yourself to be accepted by a group. You wear the mask.
Trying to be what you think they want.
Exactly. But belonging, that's being accepted for who you truly, authentically are. Imperfections and all. It doesn't require you to change. It requires you to be yourself.
That feels much deeper, more real.
It is. And her research gave her these really grounded definitions. Love, for her participants, was about letting your vulnerable self be truly seen and known.
And nurturing that connection.
Yes, with trust, respect, kindness, affection. And belonging was that innate human need to be part of something bigger than ourselves. But you get there by showing up authentically and accepting yourself first.
It's so easy to get caught up in those worthiness prerequisites, though, isn't it? Like, I'll feel worthy when.
Oh, definitely. When I lose the weight, when I get the promotion, when my kids are perfect, we all have them.
But Brown just cuts through that.
She does. She says, worthiness has no prerequisites. None. You are worthy now. Full stop.
We spend so much energy striving for it instead of just recognizing it's already there.
That's a huge part of her message. And it clearly resonated. She shares comments like from Justin Valentin, who realized loving his kids helped him learn self-compassion.
Seeing himself in them.
Kinda, yeah. And Renee Cobb had this both-hand idea that loving others fiercely can actually fuel compassion for ourselves. It's not either-or.
That's beautiful. Okay, let's talk about the first tool, courage. And specifically, owning our stories. What does that involve?
It means facing our experiences, even the messy, difficult ones, and integrating them into who we are. It takes real courage. She tells a story about bombing a talk early on, and the fear of repeating that failure just paralyzed her before this big speaking gig, the UP experience.
That fear is so relatable. Past failures can really haunt you.
They really can. And she contrasts that with this other experience, a networking lunch, where someone basically tried to tell her exactly what to say in her talk.
Trying to control it, make it comfortable.
Exactly. It highlights how much our culture fears discomfort. We want the quick fix, the easy how-to, rather than sitting with the hard stuff.
We want the 5 easy steps to happiness.
Right. But real growth, Brown argues, means acknowledging those tough emotions, working through them. And for her, owning that story about the bad talk was crucial. It let her reclaim her identity.
As someone who deals with the messy stuff.
Yeah, as a researcher who studies the things that get in the way of joy and connection, like shame.
Let's talk about shame. How does she define it?
She defines shame as that intensely painful feeling or belief that we're flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. It's not just guilt about doing something bad. It's feeling you are bad.
And it thrives in secrecy.
Absolutely. That's its breeding ground. The more we hide our stories, the more power shame has.
So the antidote is?
Reaching out. Sharing our stories with trusted people. People who've earned the right to hear them, who respond with empathy, not judgment.
That takes courage, too, finding those people and opening up.
It really does. She tells this anecdote about a critical email she got. And her friend Laura helped her see her response not just as hurt, but as shame resilience.
Meaning
Recognizing the shame, feeling the sting, but not letting it define her worth or dictate her next move. It's about bouncing back with your worthiness intact.
That's a skill. She also mentions ways people react to shame, right? Moving away, toward, against.
Yeah, based on Dr. Linda Hartling's work. Moving away is like withdrawing, hiding. Moving toward is trying to appease or please. Moving against is getting angry, blaming others.
And none of those really help.
No, she says they all ultimately distance us from our true stories and block real connection and healing. Owning the story is the way through.
Okay, so courage to own our stories. How do compassion and connection fit in?
They're completely linked. Practicing compassion for ourselves and others is vital. And interestingly, she says a key part of compassion is setting boundaries.
Boundaries? How does that connect?
Well, if you don't set boundaries, if you let yourself be constantly drained or taken advantage of, you build resentment. And you just can't be compassionate when you're resentful.
That makes total sense. Boundaries protect your ability to be compassionate.
Exactly. She also talks about blame culture. How quick we are to blame, rather than holding people accountable. Shame focuses on you are bad, while accountability focuses on you did something bad. Big difference.
And connection, that seems more straightforward.
Well, yes, we're biologically wired for it. Our relationships literally shape our biology. But here's a fascinating insight she shares. You can't truly give with an open heart until you can receive with an open heart.
Say more about that.
If we judge ourselves or others for needing help, for receiving, then we're implicitly judging the act of giving too. It shuts down the flow.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. Judging receiving limits giving.
Right. And her definition of compassion, based on her friend Ashley helping her through a shame moment, is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just being present, being in the darkness with someone without judging, without trying to fix it.
It's just being there. That's powerful.
It really is.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Gratitude and joy, these sound purely positive, but she says there are barriers.
Yeah, you'd think they'd be easy, right?
Mhm.
But she found obstacles. She sees them as deeply connected. Joy, she argues, is rooted in gratitude, and it's different from happiness, which is more tied to circumstances.
Right, happiness is circumstantial, joy is deeper. So what gets in the way?
Two main things came up in her research. First, scarcity, that feeling of never enough, not enough time, money, love, whatever, just not
A
enough.
constant feeling of lack.
Exactly. And the second is what she calls foreboding joy. It's like when things are going well, you're almost waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Mm.
You're afraid to fully feel the joy because you're anticipating pain.
Oh man, that's so real. You don't want to get too happy because something might take it away.
Precisely. You dampen the joy to protect yourself from potential future pain. As an antidote to scarcity, she brings in Lynn Twist's idea of sufficiency.
Sufficiency.
Yeah, the deep down knowing that you are enough and you have enough. It's an internal state, not dependent on external things.
That's a powerful mindset shift. And joy often shows up in ordinary moments, right? We miss it if we only look for the big stuff.
Absolutely. She really stresses that joy lives in the ordinary. And she offers this strategy, dig deep, for cultivating gratitude.
Deep, deep.
D is for deliberate in your thoughts, I for inspired to notice the good, and G for getting into action, expressing that gratitude.
I like that. Deliberate, inspired, get going.
Okay, what about numbing? How does that fit in?
Numbing is a really common way we try to deal with difficult feelings, pain, shame, anxiety. We numb with food, booze, shopping, busyness, you name it.
Trying to switch off the bad feelings.
Right. But the problem is you can't selectively numb. When you numb the painful emotions, you inevitably numb the positive ones too. You numb your capacity for joy.
Oh, so it's a package deal. It is. And that creates this awful cycle. You numb pain, which reduces joy, which leaves you with fewer emotional reserves when things get tough again, making you want to numb even more. And she adds, even joy itself requires vulnerability. Letting ourselves feel it fully can feel risky.
Okay, now play and rest. These seem almost frivolous compared to shame and courage, but she says they're crucial.
They really are. She admits she was surprised too, initially. But then she found Dr. Stuart Brown's research on play.
What did he find?
He found play is absolutely essential for brain development, empathy, creativity, problem solving, overall well-being. His famous quote is, "The opposite of play is not work. The opposite of play is depression."
Wow, that hits hard. The opposite of play is depression.
It really reframes it, doesn't it? But our society often devalues play, especially for adults. And rest, too. We wear exhaustion like a badge of honor.
Yeah, being busy equals being important.
Right. But rest isn't laziness. It's a biological necessity. Sleep debt has serious consequences. We need to recharge.
We forget how fundamental it is.
We do. She shares this lovely story about her family making a joy and meaning list instead of a typical dream list of achievements or stuff.
What was on it?
Things like family dinners, reading, time together. And they realized, looking at that list, they were already living their dream by focusing on those things.
That's a beautiful perspective shift, focusing on joy and meaning, not just acquiring things.
Exactly. Another key area is cultivating calm and stillness, especially when dealing with anxiety.
Which is everywhere these days.
So true. And interestingly, she notes that as you become more aware of wholehearted living, you might actually become more sensitive to anxiety's physical signs. The goal isn't just to tough it out.
But to actually learn to be less anxious.
Yes. And practicing calm and stillness is key. Simple things like focused breathing, pausing before reacting. They build resilience over time.
Small steps again.
She also brings in Harriet Lerner's ideas about overfunctioning and underfunctioning, how we sometimes react to anxiety by either taking over everything or shutting down. Recognizing those patterns is the first step to changing them.
That's helpful. Okay, meaningful work. What does that look like in this context?
It's about work that feels like it aligns with your purpose, gives you a sense of accomplishment, maybe even feels like a calling. It's more than just a paycheck.
But it can be hard to define ourselves outside of work, can it? That question, what do you do?
Oh, it's huge. She talks about the struggle to answer that honestly, especially if you have multiple passions or identities. The slash effect, she calls it.
Like accountant jeweler.
Exactly. But self-doubt often stops people from claiming all those parts of themselves. She shares that amazing Howard Thurman quote.
Which one?
Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. because what the world needs is people who have come alive.
Goosebumps. That's powerful.
Isn't it? It shifts the focus entirely. She also mentions Marcy Albaher on multiple careers and Malcolm Gladwell's criteria for meaningful complexity, autonomy, effort, reward, connection.
Lots to think about there. Finally, letting go of being cool and in control, embracing laughter, song, and dance.
Yes, these are fundamental human needs for connection, expression, release. But they're also super vulnerable.
Because you might look silly.
Totally. Shame pops up again. Fear of looking awkward, foolish, not cool. We hustle for worthiness by trying to maintain this cool, controlled image.
And that stifles the real you.
Completely. She tells this great story about her daughter Ellen dancing in a shoe store. Just pure joy. And Brown had this moment of choice, worry about what others think, or fully embrace and support her daughter's joy.
And she chose joy.
She chose joy. And she makes it the point that when we betray ourselves to look cool, we often end up betraying others too. She finishes with a Hopi saying, to watch us dance is to hear our hearts speak.
Beautiful. So wrapping all this up, wholehearted living is really about...
It's about engaging with your life from a place of worthiness, knowing deep down that you are enough. It's that daily practice of saying, no matter what gets done and how much is left undone, I am enough.
And waking up imperfect and vulnerable, but also brave and worthy of love.
Exactly. That's the core message. And this whole discovery came from her own rigorous research.
Yeah, her path wasn't exactly conventional, was it?
Not at all. Lots of different experiences before finding her way to social work and qualitative research, specifically grounded theory.
Which means letting the theory emerge from the stories, right? Not proving something you already believe.
Precisely. She really emphasizes her commitment to honoring the stories people shared, letting their experiences guide her understanding. That's what led her to these insights.
So the big takeaway here, what should people leave this discussion thinking about?
That embracing imperfection isn't weakness. It's not settling. It's actually about finding the courage, the compassion, and the connection you need to live a truly full, authentic life.
It really does offer a different way to approach things.
It really does. So maybe take a moment after this, reflect on your own do and don't lists, maybe identify one tiny step towards embracing your imperfections.
And remember, you can explore more on our YouTube channel, Mindful Moments, and through our podcasts for related discussions.
Yeah, we hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already, and maybe share this conversation if you know someone who might benefit. There's also a link in the description if you want to grab a copy of the Gifts of Imperfection.
And most importantly, really think critically about those messages around perfection and worthiness that you've absorbed. Question them.
Absolutely.
And here's a final thought to leave you with. What could possibly open up in your life if you started from the belief, the deep knowing, that you are enough right here, right now?